here and to work my way upstream just to indicate some of the typical distress that we have here. This test section is right about in the middle of all of the ones we have. Our dominant distress throughout this roadway is longitudinal cracking. Now, what has happened apparently is it has progressed beyond just having cracking in the wheel pads, and we have associated cracking. In a few places it has worked into what would be termed as low severity alligator cracking, perhaps, such as right over there. Generally, all the cracking out here is low severity, except there are some locations pretty well randomly spaced throughout within each section where we may get up into the medium severity category based upon the crack width. But any of those places are just very localized, and there's no pattern to where they are forming at. One thing that I did that was interesting, and I'll try to show it here from the side over there in the inside lane, is you can see very similar types of cracking, the same types of distress, maybe not quite as much cracking, transverse directional cracking associated with the longitudinal cracks over there as you have in the outside lane, but about the same frequency of cracked or same area of pavement cracked. We're at Station 4. See right in here they've done some filling in where they had some lane shoulder drop off where some vehicles had gotten over and worn out the soil right up, butting up against the edge of the pavement. Of course, that will be corrected by the rehabilitation they're going to do, which is going to include paving this outside shoulder out to 4 feet. This will be the section, if I remember correctly, that receives the 2-inch overlay. See, the cracking in here is just about continuous up and down this lane, up and down both wheel pads in this lane, with some cracking out in the center of the lane. Since there is generally some cracking associated with the longitudinal crack, one could just define this as for both test sections about 1,000 feet of medium severity, I guess, because of the associated cracking, longitudinal cracks, can be done with. I have not observed any transverse cracks which extend across the lane at least half the lane width. There are cracks that are going in that direction, of course, most of those being associated with some of the longitudinal cracking we see. In general, though, I guess if I were looking as to how to treat this, I would look to maintain this in an area-wide type of thing rather than on a crack-by-crack basis. None of these cracks, or most of them, are not wide enough to take any sealant. There's a few that you can see over there and right in there in the immediate foreground, which could take some crack sealing, but the vast majority of them wouldn't. There's no evidence of pumping out here either. Well, I'm sorry, this is 120508. Had the wrong number. Now, the stripe that you see up there is one of those traffic monitoring stripes which is used by the highway patrol here to monitor speeds of vehicles from the air. And here's our stripe that we set down, and you can see we free-handed the markings in. Cleo Marsh and Maria Connolly from the Fort Lauderdale office came out yesterday as we were out here and marked every fifth station down, which was a great help for us in going through here and identifying and checking ourselves location-wise on the test sections. As I said before, we've got most of these are 800-foot segments and then 100-foot transitions in between. And what we have is a 200-foot lead in the monitoring section and a 100-foot lead out. However, in one case, we changed that to where we only had a 700-foot long segment, a 100-foot in, 100-foot out, rather than the 200-foot lead in. And the reason for that was to cut down on, to be able to come down on the overlay thickness as we got into a place where we had to extend the length of our work beyond that. So what we don't really have, we have a very long lead into the following section because we're going through one of these entrances. As a matter of fact, I believe this is the section where we do that. If you look up there in the foreground, you may be able to see the mark on the pavement. That's 100 feet up from us. And what that does is signifies where we get into this overlay thickness. Turn off the zoom there. Walk around slowly. And then beyond, you can see we ended it, and then we went on a little bit further and then did our transition, and then got out of the transition right as you get into that auxiliary right turn lane down there. And what this will allow them to do is to cut down on the total thickness that they have to use in there, and also gets us beyond this left curve that's coming up ahead. I think we've got a real good and real workable layout here. The people here are more than willing to experiment with this, and we may indeed wind up adding a few more sections downstream. I may try and suggest that they do some different things perhaps on the surface preparation to see how well that works out. We have room for maybe 3 or 4 more test sections out here, so it's not, we don't have an unlimited length to work with, but we've got enough to add something of significance if they care to. Well, with this, what I'll do is go ahead and end this video at this time for the SPS-5 test section in Florida. The reason I'm doing so is because we will have plenty of opportunities to get this over again just before we commence construction out here, which will be about this time next year. At that time, we can go through and do a full scale before rehabilitation review of what the conditions were and so on out here before overlay, and then get it, of course, as it's under construction. I'll go ahead and end the video at this point, and later on this tape what you'll be seeing is some stuff pertaining to the traffic monitoring locations, and I'll go on down on this project and show this traffic monitoring site, which is associated with the GPS site, but of course will serve